big warm welcome to everyone, and thank you so much for joining on this webinar, which is called Earning Your Seat at the Table, where we're overcoming obstacles to succeed as an assistant. Joining me today is three fantastic people. And just a quick introduction, I'm Bertie Siggers. I'm a senior consultant at Tiger Recruitment. Just format of the webinar, we'll be discussing, various topics today for the next 45 minutes with a Q&A at the end. As I said, it is being recorded, so if you need to leave or join later on, that's absolutely fine. Q&A, you feel free to write your questions, in the box, and hopefully we can answer them throughout the webinar, but if not, we will then answer them accordingly at the end. If we didn't answer your questions, please then email your questions to tiger@tiger-recruitment.co.uk. So, without further ado, I'll welcome our three wonderful speakers. Firstly, we have Simone White, a career administrative professional with over 25 years experience. The last 12 years, she's been at global investment bank BlackRock, and she is also the chair of GAIN at BlackRock, which is the Global Administrative Initiative Network. Welcome, Simone.
Hi.
Then we have Matthew Want, who is EA to Lucia Brazier. Lucy Brazier is the founder of the Executive Support EA magazine, and Matthew also helps with lots of different live events for them. Finally, we have Shakyra Campbell, who is a financial services candidate who has a wealth of experience in EA, office management, HR roles. And alongside this, she is an artist and has won the two awards, the Pill Award and the Red Mansion Art Prize. And also I forgot to mention, Matthew has also is a winner of the Miss Jones Award for Social Media Influencer and is third on PA Club's Top 100 Power List. Welcome, guys. So we'll just get going in the first topic of today, which is barriers to success. So Simone, what are the biggest misconceptions about assistants you hear from?
I think it all depends on who you're speaking to as to who will have the misconception. I think if you're speaking to everybody who's not an assistant, the biggest misconception I've heard is either an assistant who comes into the profession always wants to remain an assistant. That's all they ever wanted to. And that's not necessarily the case. And I think the other misconception is that the other way round. So assistants who come into profession, they don't want to be an assistant all of the time. They just are using it as a stepping stone. So those are the two biggest misconceptions that I'm aware of as being an assistant in this space, is that often people think you fall into it. It's not something that you've chosen to do, so it's not really a profession. Or if you are in it, that you're closed to ever coming out of it. So I think those are the two biggest misconceptions I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's great. And then Shakyra, what would you say, how can assistants be authentically themselves at work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the first thing you need to know who you are, first and foremost, and understand your strengths and weaknesses. It's okay to have weaknesses, and that is what also helps you with your strengths, in order to really kind of amplify those elements that you're able to really excel in. And I think a key thing is remove the notion that the professional you and the personal you are different. Really bring 100% of yourself to work. It's a mistake I've made, and I can hold my hand up to it. I think it's so important to really embrace and embody all of you when you go to the workplace, because they've hired you. And I think the other thing is to refrain from blending in and losing the essence of the competitive advantage that you had over the candidates that weren't successfully placed. You were. And know your worth, know what you're wanting from any role that you have, and know what you're wanting to bring when you're supporting your managers. But most importantly, just, re-emphasizing, remember that you are hired and that you were hired, and that you are the competitive advantage. And also to have, and by knowing that, to have the confidence to feel that I can be me, and I have been picked to be in this organization because I am me.
Yeah, I mean, I was had interview feedback last week on some graduates, and they said, obviously, I understand they haven't been, interviewing, they haven't had a wealth of experience, but they said, honestly, just tell them to be themselves. Like, we want to hear them. We don't want to hear, the kind of interview practice generic answers. We want to hear their answers, and it's fine if they don't tick all the boxes. We just want to, that's how you get the best out of the right candidate, just being totally honest. And Matt, what sort of barriers would you say you faced in your career up to this point?
I would say when I started, I've worked with Lucy now for 9 years. And back when I started and I told people I was going to become an assistant, a lot of people, my friends, said to me, oh, you're a man, what are you going to be doing, tea and typing, that sort of thing. And now, 9 years on, as we know, there's so much more to the role. I think, unfortunately, the role is stereotyped a lot as a woman's role, and it's not. A man or a woman can do it. You've just got to have the skill set available. I think there's also so many misconceptions out there that the role is just, again, people think it's back to what it was 50, 60 years ago, tea and typing, which, again, we all know it's not. There's event management, social media, all that sort of thing. It's been a tough one, and luckily I know so many amazing people, so many amazing women and men within this industry that I've managed to get past that, and my friends can now see what the role is actually about instead of just what they thought it was, tea and typing. Yeah.
No. And also, well, that's like it again. I was picking up a brief, and they just said, I said, is it, what are you wanting? And they just said, look, we want to move away from that stereotypical touch typing, we want someone who's more dynamic, can bring more to the table, has more sort of skills, can help us in so many different things. So that perception of typing is definitely gradually moving away, which is great. So moving on to sort of starting out building, your career. Shakyra, how can assistants who value an inclusive workplace ensure they're joining a company that reflects their values?
Yeah, again, I think, first of all, it's so important to understand that diversity and inclusion doesn't always go hand in hand. There is a misconception that if an employee population is extremely diverse numerically, it's an inclusive environment, which isn't always the case. To be an inclusive environment, to me, is to allow for equitable opportunities to positively affect everyone, regardless of their gender, regardless of their race, religion, or sexuality. Again, it's important from the outset, as mentioned, to do your research. So when you're interviewing, have prepared questions. Understand, for example, the people that are working there. See if you can broach conversations with the people prior to the interview stage. The key thing, I think, is actually to speak to people who are ex-employees, which is what I've done, to understand their reasons for leaving and to understand how that's amplified their careers and how they've been able to go to the next stage as an executive assistant, or just overall. And have prepared questions to really decipher whether the company is culturally intelligent, whether it's courageous, and most importantly, whether it's committed to fulfilling the statements that they've detailed. I mean, Deloitte says it brilliantly. 6 signature traits of an inclusive leader include commitment, courage, cognizance of bias, curiosity, cultural intelligence, and collaboration. And I would ask yourself the question, do you see these 6 signature traits in the potential manager that you're going to be interviewed by? And also another way to kind of find out, is an environment inclusive? Look at the turnover. You know, many companies that are inclusive will see a 50% decrease in turnover of their employees. What is their retention rate like? And in addition, find out the revenue growth of the business you're in. It's easy for me to do that because I'm in financial services. They very much publicize how well they've done, you know, what their their AUM is, which is assets under management. So you can get an understanding of, you know, the commerciality of a company. But for those who are interviewing right now, how have they fared in a pandemic? How are they treating their, you know, assistants, their employees? I mean, Forbes says it really well, that 24% higher revenue growth is found in companies that have diversity, equity, inclusion. So for me, assess their mission statement, really see whether that mission statement is very much resonant with your own morals and values. And then you can really find out that, yes, this is an inclusive environment and I can authentically be me, whatever my background is.
Yeah, I mean, also because so often candidates say, oh, what questions should I ask? You know, what if they've answered all my questions? And I just say, well, you know what, the best question, to, you know, turn it around on them, ask them, why do you like working here? And then bingo, you get a really good idea of, you know, if it's going to, you know, you get the perfect idea of, actually, yeah, I can see myself working here, or actually from what he's said or she said, no, it's not right. You know, just, you know, don't be afraid to do that. Ask them, why do you like working here? What do you find, you know, interesting? What do you love about it here? You know, what do you expect from me in the role? You know, turn it back on them and ask them. I think that's a great way to get a really understanding of, is this the right company and role for me? So moving on, Simone, what is your best advice for established assistants who are looking to advance in their career?
I thought of this question and it's quite interesting, simply because you've used the term established assistants. And I wanted to explore what an established assistant is. And I'm going to use myself. So I'll pick on myself as an example and then say how I advanced my career. Because similar to what Shakyra and Matthew have said previously about, I loved what Shakyra said around being yourself. I think it's one of the most important things you can do as an assistant, especially when people don't appreciate what you bring to the table as an assistant, because it can really dampen your spirit and it can dampen your motivation. And you may find that you're saying, I'm just an assistant. And that word, that tiny 4-letter word, is a very big thing that will stop you advancing your career, even if you're established, because you have the perception that other people are putting on you. So if everybody perceives that you are just, you might start acting like just, and that stops your advancement. Now, it may not be that you feel that you're not advancing. You could be within your team and you really understand what your executive wants and you understand the meaning of everything that's happening in that team and you know where they're going. But how does that reflect on you as an individual? Do people in your team see you, the individual, with the role that you are playing and the impact of that role? Because if they don't, are you really advancing your career? And I think that's something that took me a long while to understand. As you said at the beginning, I've been an assistant for close to 25 years. I'm sure it's 25 now. But it's only been maybe in the last 10 years, I've really understood what my role is as an assistant and what my why is as an assistant. And it isn't to do everything that my boss says. And it's having that understanding has actually advanced my career, because I work for a big organization, and it's my organization that employs me. It's not that individual executive that I'm working for at the time. Now, me understanding what my role is and the role that I play, that's what has advanced my career. Because now I work with my teams, and it doesn't really matter who I'm supporting, but whoever I am supporting, I always say to them, what is the outcome that you want for this team? What are your objectives? And then when they give me those, I then turn around and say, this is how I can administratively help you reach those goals. So I have an input into how the goals are then formulated across the team. Whereas previously, I would be sitting back thinking, okay, I would say, what is it you want to achieve? And then I would say, and how would you like me to help you? So that's putting everything back on them. Whereas now I know exactly what my role is within my team. I just need to know, what do they want the outcome to be? And then I can help them. And I think that mindset shift has totally changed absolutely everything for me.
Yeah, I think that proactiveness, initiative, and I think that comes, with experience, being like, right, I know what to do, experience and confidence, and just kind of being familiar, being like, right, starting a new job, need to sort of, you become more confident the more you do it. And I guess, yeah, just being one step ahead of the game, or 10 steps. So Matt, obviously, as well as supporting Lucy in an EA capacity, you also get incredibly involved with all the event side of things, which is proving more popular with EAs. They think, I do events work, or I'd love to do that. I mean, what advice would you give to candidates who are looking, to get more involved with things within the business?
One thing I always do, and I speak about this, and Lucy speaks about it when Lucy's giving presentations, is as Lucy's EA, as everyone here will know, you need to be there for them. You need to know what's going on. You need to be, as you said, 1 or 10 steps ahead, whatever it might be, to make sure you can be the best you can be. One thing I always do is, I've done it for the last few years, and it's every day when I come in, I look at Lucy's sent box. Now, that's not me being sneaky or anything like that. It's so I can look through and see what's going on. I find it really important to do that, because there's sometimes things that maybe Lucy has, you know how it is with executives, they're sometimes typing away and they forget to copy you in or something like that, so you can go back. Or if there's a deadline that Lucy's replied to, you can put that into the diary and make her life easier. Being on top of the ball is one huge part, especially with COVID. There's a lot of people now around the world who are not working in the same office anymore, and we don't know when that's going to come back to happening. I know in the UK they're talking about it started coming back in over the next few months, but even then, you've had this last year, you can start to implement things that you think are going to work. Trust as well is a big part. If you do not have that trust between you and your executive, it's not going to work. I've worked at home now probably the best part of the last 9 years I've been working with Lucy, and we have that trust. She knows that I will be there if I need her. I'm there from, say, for example, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. in the evening. And if she needs anything, she can message me throughout the day or WhatsApp. And then after that, unless it's something really urgent, she knows that we both have our time with our families and we can just switch off. So being there, being available, kind of being like putty, if you like, you're there to be molded into how you should be for the business, but also you can control yourself how you want to be so the business works around you. So it's finding what works for both of you and making it useful as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. So moving on to sort of the next topic, networking, mentoring, and sponsorship. I mean, I feel more and more there's such a strong network available. There's so many different things you can get involved with, within the support world, which is amazing. And, you know, especially I feel in the last year with everyone being virtual, I mean, I just think LinkedIn has just gone crazy. You know, so many more people are being active, and, you know, people are getting across themselves. You know, they are posting things that they're interested in, and it's really great to sort of see that. I mean, myself, I'm using LinkedIn so much more in the last, you know, year than I ever have been, and so I can really feel that sort of presence, especially on the internet. So Simone, you obviously started the amazing Gain at BlackRock, and now I think you have over 500 assistants, which is just incredible. Why did you start the network, and what does it offer to its members?
I think you highlighted the importance of networks, and sometimes we think of them as nice things to have, and we don't really realize how powerful networks are, and that networks can be catalysts for change, and they can impact change. So when I think of the network that we have, it's, if you think of assistants, especially in large organizations specifically, they tend to be quite siloed. So they might be the only assistant in a team. And although they might be another assistant on the floor or in the group, there's not lots of them in the same way there are lots of other professionals if you sit within your team. Mm-hmm. So that can often lead to unintentional alienation. It can also mean that we're not visible because we are the only ones. So things that our training may be overlooked, our development may be overlooked. So when we started the network at BlackRock, it was to basically give us a collective voice, because 500 voices are so much more powerful than one voice or a couple of voices spread across the world. But also it enabled us to connect directly with each other and to have a group of people that were just like you. You all had the same professional field. We're very fortunate at BlackRock because we have a number of networks, but there wasn't an assistant network, and we felt that we needed it for simple things. So when training was being rolled out or new technology was being rolled out, as assistants, we are end users. But not only are we end users, we're also the first people call on when something goes wrong with it. Although you might have IT, you know that if something goes wrong with your executives WebEx, for instance, they're going to be sending a message to you to say, oh, this has happened. Do you know how to sort it? Even though they know the number for IT. But if something new is rolled out and assistants get the training exactly the same time as everybody else, we become less effective because we're having to learn it at exactly the same time as everyone else. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we did as a network was reach out to all of our stakeholders in those areas, saying anytime something new is going to be released, can you let us know first and train us first? Because then you have 500 other people who know the systems, who can then support the 16,000 other people rather than them all coming to you. And that's where we started out. It was just a way of giving our stakeholders a focal point, a central point that they could connect with us. And it's basically grown from there, so that we have bespoke training, we have onboarding for new assistants, because again, when a new person comes into the firm, they join a team and they ask their assistant 1,000,001 questions. But if you're the new assistant coming into the team, who do you ask? Because you should already know, technically. But if you've never been taught, you can't know, and that puts us at a disadvantage. So by having the network, it enables us to focus on all of those things that we see through an administrative lens, because nobody knows administration better than the assistants who are sitting in the organization. So we need to be able to voice those opinions as a group collectively, and that's what we've done with Gain.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And you know, like when I speak to clients, sort of picking up a brief, and I'll sort of say, so what does the role entail? And they just say, actually, I don't know, you need to speak to the PA or EA, and they're the best people because they know exactly what it is. They know how they work, oh, they do this, they do that. So no, and that's so welcoming as well for a candidate starting a job, that they have that support already there. It's fantastic. Shakyra, how can assistants facilitate a mentorship or a sponsorship with another person, and how do you go about choosing that sort of person?
Yeah, again, a really good question. I just wanted to have an opportunity to really say what Simone said is just completely on point. It's so important, particularly remaining relevant as an assistant, to really know the systems and to be at the heart of its induction. But again, Bertie, just going back to your question, how to facilitate a mentorship or a sponsorship, I think it's first important to define what a sponsor and a mentor is. Carla Harris, she wrote a fantastic book called Expect to Win, which I live by. And I see Simone nodding, so I think she knows about it too. Indeed, she is just amazing. And I'm sure Simone knows this, but according to Carla Harris, a sponsor is essentially someone who will use their political and social capital to move your career forward within an organization, whereas a mentor is someone who can answer your discrete career questions and who can give specific tailored career advice. You can tell them anything and it's usually very much confidential. But simply, a sponsor is a leader and manager who advocates on your behalf or on behalf of another person, whereas a mentor is a trusted guide who will provide advice and support and coaching. So these roles are important to have. I have both, thank goodness. A sponsor is very easy to pick. It generally is your line manager. They're the ones that are doing your annual review. They tend to be involved in any kind of promotional cycles that you're a part of. And they are the people that you're going to meet with either weekly or bi-weekly to check in with them, to see how things are going, to see how, your role is going. I mean, Matthew, who works closely with Lucy, that immediately from someone looking on the outset, that would be your sponsor. That is the person that's advocating for you and for your career and has a seat, as Carla says beautifully, has a seat at that table of decision making, because we don't have the opportunity to be in the decision making table. It's opportunities like having a gay network and bringing bigger voices that enable the voices to be heard in those rooms. So the sponsor is very important. And then your mentor is a little bit more trickier to select. You tend to select them at the beginning of the hiring cycle, and that's when I would do so, and that's what I've done in the majority of the places I've worked at. When I've started, I've kind of gauged, spoken to a lot of people, networked to get familiar with people, and I've selected my mentor that way. But the way I've done it is, who stood out to me in the interview stage? Who did I feel I really connected with and really kind of advocated the actual mission statement of that company? And another thing that I look at is, where do I aspire to be in 2 to 5 years? And is this person looking like that? And another thing is someone that you aren't always going to see all the time. I wouldn't always pick a mentor who's in my team. I just wouldn't. I'm someone who wants to open and widen my network and have an opportunity to speak to someone who is looking at areas that I'm not even looking at, or within a different department. So that's how I kind of select my mentor. But on the majority of occasions, particularly in larger organizations, new joiners will tend to be onboarded onto what is an internal mentoring program, where you're able to, or your company will select from a pool of your peers in giving you your mentor. But I can only emphasize the importance of understanding the difference, but making sure you maintain and have those relationships. And you can have more than one mentor, and they don't even have to be in your organization. They could be someone that you are friendly with. It could be a life coach. It could be anyone. But I would say those roles are important to initiate your success.
That's amazing. And also, I don't know if lots of people know that is, those mentorship, sponsorship is available. So that's Brilliant. And does this book, is it by Carla?
Carla Harris, yes.
Carla Harris.
To Win. And I'm just starting Strategize to Win. She's an amazing speaker. She actually came to our organization and spoke about leadership and inclusivity. But she's brilliant. And I think she's particularly brilliant for people who are of diversity and are trying to navigate any, I think, organization. And I also think it's a great book for anyone. So do pick it up.
No, I'll definitely look up and order it. Sounds great.
I second that. Go look her up on YouTube. You'll be inspired. She's got one for every day of the week if you need one. But yeah, she's brilliant.
Brilliant. And Matt, how important are the networks you've developed to your success so far?
I think any network you have is key to developing and progressing within your role, whatever industry you're in. I've been very lucky with Lucy that I managed to be able to travel to all these events around the world and meet all these fantastic assistants and just have that network at my fingertips. I think one thing that's really stood out over the last year is how much more people are using those networks to expand and to branch out. I think beforehand, and this is just my opinion, I think there were quite a few people who were going to their networks when they wanted something instead of utilizing them. Again, I'm going to go back to the putty reference. I always find that with your network, you don't just go to them when you want something. You slowly mold it. You slowly put stuff out there. I'm, for those of you that may have me on Facebook, I'm quite an open person. I'll put stuff on there. I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. You know, I want to raise awareness for these sort of things. And having that network as well, having it at that personal level, when I see people, it's a different relationship. They know they can come to you and speak to you, not just on a work matter, but on a personal matter. Networks, especially now, are key and crucial as we come back post-COVID, if you like to call it. When we get back out there into the world, there's going to be a new system. There's going to be a lot of people that are anxious and aren't sure what's going on, and there's going to be other people there who are in the same boat. So reach out to your network, speak to them. You know, there's always going to be someone who knows something that you don't, and vice versa, whether it be online you're speaking to someone or in person. You never know who you're going to speak to. If you're saying to yourself, I don't want to go and have that conversation, do it, because you never ever know where it's going to take you.
Yeah, no. My dad's always sort of said, always say, you know, well, when appropriate, always say yes, go out and grab it, you know, it's the best. And I guess, Matt, you're literally in the hub of networks for all assistants, so you must just sort of be amazing. You're exposed to everything.
I'm very, very lucky in that aspect. I've connected with a lot of people and made relationships with a lot of people, and it's a network that I've built not just overnight. And that's another thing. Don't just think you're going to get your network overnight. It's taken me 9-10 years to get the network I've got now, and that's not to say it's where it can be. I can always progress it and bring it along further. So just always utilize your network, progress, and make sure use it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, no, great, thanks. So moving on to developing essential traits, Simone, would you say confidence plays a part in success as an assistant in your experience?
I think it does, but I also think it depends on what people mean by confidence. And I think this goes back to being relevant. So if you remain relevant, then your confidence grows. I think if we were having a discussion about another topic, I don't know, let's say climate change, I'd be able to speak to you about climate change, but not in the detail that I can speak to you about administration, because I don't know it as well. Yes, I know I need to recycle my plastics and there are things that I can do to help the environment, but I don't study the environment the way I study administration. So if you want to be confident in this role, know it. Actually know what your role is, because that's what builds confidence. And the more you know it, when you're in a team where nobody else knows it, you can speak so much more passionately, effectively, and efficiently about it. So by you remaining relevant, understanding what is happening. We all went home a year ago. If you were a person who hated technology, you would have had an awful journey over that year, because you would suddenly have to know Zoom and WebEx and all these other things and that are suddenly there. And you would have people calling you because you are their point of call as the assistant. You are the first person they're going to approach to say, okay, what's this new OneNote thing? What's Teams? How am I supposed to be using Teams? And if you have a fear of technology, your confidence will never grow in it, because you will always second guess yourself. You will always do that. And the minute you start second guessing yourself in that way, your team will second guess you and they will stop coming to you. And as an assistant, that's the last thing you want. So I think if you want to be confident in your role, remain relevant, know what's happening in our world of administration, know what the technologies are coming. And I'm not saying you need to know them so you're an expert at it. I'm not a Microsoft Office specialist, but I do know how to use OneNote and Excel and PowerPoint. And I'm not scared of technology. I want technology to be my friend, because it enables me to do my job more effectively. So if confidence is what you're lacking, get confident in your role. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be doing what we're doing here and talking about it in front of an audience. That's not the confidence you need necessarily, because maybe that's not what you want to do. But if you want to feel confident in your role as an assistant and people to see you as a professional, remain relevant. I no longer type 70, 80 words a minute because it's not required for me right now. It would be pointless if I did, because I'd literally have lost the skill, because I don't have to do it anymore. In the same way I used to speak business French, I don't speak it anymore because my team don't require it anymore, and I've lost that. We don't ever want to lose the confidence to learn and keep learning. I am still learning 25 years later, and I don't think I will ever stop learning, because that's what builds my confidence and keeps me relevant and keeps my role relevant.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely agree with everything you've said. And I think a lot of people were thrown into the deep end when it was remote working and having to learn. I mean, I'm really not very tech savvy, but you just sort of click on a few buttons and see what happens. And YouTube is great at explaining things as well, and there are so many courses as well to go on. So yeah, it's definitely agree. And Shakyra, what other traits would you say are important for an assistant to develop in order to succeed?
Well, I think the number one trait is authenticity, because essentially that is your brand. I think it's so important for assistants to realize, as much as it may seem a bit icky saying it, you are a brand, and you are there to really kind of emphasize that you are different from the next person who's at the next desk to you, and that's why you're supporting the managers whom you're supporting. But on top of that, EQ is so important, emotional intelligence. I think that's essential, and I think what's so powerful about EQ is it's something that you can always improve on and adapt, not as much as obviously IQ. So EQ is something, as Simone is so right, we constantly learn. However many years we've dedicated to our profession, we're always learning, and EQ is just that. Humility, I think, is so important. You are not the star of the show. Your boss is who you're supporting is, and knowing how to embrace that and knowing when to have that window of opportunity to platform yourself. Consistency, accountability, being collaborative with the person that you're working with. Resilience, I think, is really key. Flexibility, integrity, and conscientiousness. But I've mentioned my top 10 traits, but I think it's important to know the foundations of your role, which Simone stated beautifully, and I completely echo and agree with. When you know what you're doing, you will have the confidence to do anything. And that's when you can add the layers of expertise, the layers of being ahead of a certain section within, let's say, a community within your company. But knowing your role is fundamental. I think the other thing is, don't just assist your managers. Matthew said it brilliantly. You have to be a partner with your managers and build that partnership. he has a fantastic relationship with Lucy because she trusts him. And they've built a partnership that they don't have to be in the same room to do great work. And know how to leverage your voice. I think everyone here can do that. And I think that's something that's really important. Knowing when to speak up. Simone said this also earlier, which really stuck out to me when she said, I've learned how to do things as opposed to being told how to do it. How, like, for example, when she said, how would you like me to do it? She can come to the table and leverage her voice and say, this is what I can do with my administrative experience. And I think that's so important. And, you know, again, I've said this, you know, don't separate the personal and professional you. Be you. And I think by doing that, it allows other people to be authentically themselves, and you get more out of them, because what we do is very much about relationships. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, wow. I think I've definitely learned a few things on, you know, how to succeed in my role. That's fantastic, both Shakyra and Simone. Thank you. And Matt, how would you say, how can assistants best develop themselves and their skills? Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I think one thing, and obviously the last year's not been pleasant for many people, but one thing it's also been a blessing. There is, you know, all the events and things have moved online. They're at your fingertips. You know, they were always there, but people were always saying they were really busy because they were traveling. You're in an office, you don't always get a chance. While you're working from home, while you're having these opportunities, have it on another screen, have it on in the background, have it on your phone, whatever it might be. Now is the time to learn and adapt to these new skills, because we don't know, God forbid, touch wood, it never happens again. But if it does, we will be prepared if it happens again, if we have to go back to working from home. You have these skills at your fingertips. We're on a computer as assistants all day. Why not add in some time for us as well? Put it on in the background, as I said, listen to it. If there's something your boss or your colleagues mentioned and you're not going to get training on it, you can probably find something on YouTube or a website on how to do it, how to learn how to do it. So take advantage of that. Tell your boss you've done that, and they will come to you and say, oh, wow, that's really, you know, you're ahead of the game, you're thinking out there. It's just those things, being those steps ahead, just learning for what's to come, because you go back a year and a half, none of us would have thought we would be here now.
Definitely not. No, that's great. So going on to the final topic today, which will be maintaining positive mental health and well-being. You know, being a PA in EA can sometimes be so full on, 24/7, 365. Shakyra, how can assistants best maintain their mental health and well-being?
Again, yeah, I really did think about this, and I think it's treating your personal engagements with the same amount of respect you treat your work engagements. You know, it's a small distinction that you will have to make, but it makes a huge impact, and it's something that has been impactful for me. You know, your mental health is just as important as your work. A thing that I always go by, there's no wealth without health. So you have to have these things hand in hand. I think another thing is to remember that you have a buddy, you have colleagues. If you have to step out, make time for your doctor's appointments. If you're working overtime and your boss is used to that, be clear when you have booked something in the diary, a theatre ticket, to commit to it, but make them aware of it. If you've built such a great partnership in work, you should be able to build that sort of partnership to let him know or her know when you need to take that step out for time for yourself. I mean, for me, it's really important not to postpone these things, because if you're postponing the stuff that you're doing outside, you're actually postponing your career, because you're not able to elevate both areas. Because as I said, your personal and professional goes in hand, and you have to bring them both to work, professionally, of course. But, you know, I think it's important to be strict from the start and to be really clear. If you're someone who wants to work within work, then fine, but be strict with it and be clear with it and know your role and know how to be able to do that within the hours. But if you're someone who does like to go above and beyond, I'm not going to pretend I am that person, but knowing when to switch off, knowing when that button needs to be switched. It's easier said than done, saying having a life work balance is imperative. I know that. but it's important to have it. And I think the key thing that I've always said is, the question is, do you want to be known as the person who does it all, who is multifaceted, who is, you know, leading gain, who's a great executive assistant, who's helping with event coordination and has a personal life and a family? Or do you want to be known as the person who works like a dog? I can honestly say I've been both, and I can happily announce that the latter is no longer present in my life. I found balance. Thank you, Simone.
Yeah, no, I mean, also as an assistant, you kind of, you know, your boss relies on you so much, which is great, but at the same time you need to have that barrier and say, look, I will support you in every single way. I'm free. I think, Matthew, you are listening to a podcast that you said that with Lucy, you're online 8 till 6, and if it's really, really urgent, then message me, but otherwise that's when I'm contactable. And you've got to set barriers, I think, from the get-go, and then they respect you more and they understand it. So yeah. So another thing, recognition is an important aspect of being satisfied at work, and I know we have spoken a bit about this earlier on, but Simone, how can assistants who don't feel recognised by their teams stay positive?
I think this can be quite hard for assistants, depending on the organisation that you're in. And you have to look at it in 2 ways. So if you're in an organisation where recognition by awards or promotion is prevalent, but assistants aren't part of that, it can be very demotivating. So when we talk about recognition, we have to look at it in different ways. So if we split it out into your team, recognition as being part of your team and from your team, you have to look, are you part of that team? So I'm not talking about supporting the team, because that's your role as an assistant, but are you fundamentally part of it? Because if you are part of it, the recognition normally comes, whether it be because a good piece of work is shared in a meeting. If you're part of a team and you've provided a good piece of work, then that recognition should follow in that team meeting. Whereas, because it happens for everyone else. Whereas if it doesn't, it could be that your team don't actually view you as a team member. And I often liken it to when you go into the office, when we were there, you would go to where you sit and you would find your computer and your table and your chair. They expect it to be there. They don't reward the chair. They don't reward the table. They just expect it to be there and to provide a service. That's not a team member. We don't want to be a table or a chair or a computer. We actually need to be providing something that the team recognize and value. And if we're always silent, or if we're never visibly doing stuff for the team, so yes, we manage calendars and we send them all over the world, but it's doing the job like the table does the job. We have to be more vocal about our own impact. And some of us may sit back and think, oh, but it's boasting. Get over the fact it's not boasting. Okay, it's not boasting for you to talk about your good work, because a lot of the time your good work is something that happens behind the scenes, and unless you talk about it, nobody will know. If you've just saved your boss who was traveling and their flights were cancelled or were going to be cancelled and they never knew all of this, and you saved them and they got to their meeting on time and they closed the deal, that boss will definitely be talking about the deal they closed. But if you had never got them there, that wouldn't have happened. So we're not talking about you sitting in a meeting and saying this in front of everybody, but does your executive know that you did all of this? Is there something that you're playing a part in besides your team? So is there something that you're helping the rest of the organization out on? Now, if you never provide that feedback, how will they know and how will they get the recognition? So it's really important that if you want recognition, what is it that you want to be recognized for? Don't be a table, don't be a chair, because although they're necessary, the only time that recognition for that table and chair is there is when they're not there, or it's not functioning properly. You don't want people to recognize that you're not there because something's not working. You want them to recognize you for the things that are working, so you need to speak about them. On the other aspect, and this is where having a network could be really handy, if you feel that you are not recognized in the same way as your colleagues, whether it be via awards, if your work has internal awards yet assistants are never included in them, this is actually a DEI point. DEI is not just about race or gender or ethnicity or religion. DEI is about making sure that everybody feels included. So if your group of assistants do not feel included, that's a DEI matter. We are not being recognised in the same way as the rest of our colleagues. Why is that? So if it's that, that's why I wanted to split it out, because if it's just within your team, then you need to make sure that you are part of the team fundamentally. Or if it's part of the organisation, talk about it, because it could be something that is an unconscious bias that they didn't realise that it was impacting you, because for the past 5, 10, 15 years, nobody said anything. Well, you've just said it to each other. You just haven't said it to the people who can make the change. So if it is something where you're not feeling included, talk about it and actually have something solid. Go to them with a solution. Don't just bring the problem, bring the solution and also the benefits. What will happen if we are fully included? What will happen if we are rewarded? How will that motivate them? How will that raise the excellence? It's really important for you, again, understand what your role is, so that when you are coming to them, you can articulate it clearly and highlight the impacts of not being included is having on the team.
Yeah. I mean, wow, amazing. Could listen to you
Yes.
all afternoon. I mean, God, you said it right there, girl. And yeah, I think, you know, assistants are so known for being, you know, very modest, you know, don't speak. And actually, you know, with everything changing, they should find a voice and they should feel that they can speak up and say all this, because, you know, they're so used to being behind, you know, doing the behind scenes, and actually they should come forward. And hopefully Simone's speech right there has given people lots of confidence to do so. So last final question to Matt. What advice do you have for assistants looking for support with their mental health or overall well-being?
I think be honest and speak to your executive about it. You know, we're all human. None of us are perfect, and I'm not. Sadly, a few weeks ago, me and my wife had a miscarriage, and Lucy turned around and I said no, I didn't want to go on a sabbatical, and she turned around and said that I want you to go on a sabbatical for 3 weeks, and today's my first day back. And at the time I thought to myself, oh, I don't want to do this, you know, as we all do, we're going to let people down, you know, there's going to be so much left behind. But I feel so much clearer in my head for having that time. I think being able to let yourself open up and speak to people, and I understand not everybody is, you know, at that stage to do it, and that's absolutely fine, but speak to someone in your company, whether it be your executive or a close colleague, and let them know what's going on. You need that support here. You know, again, over the last year, so many people have been through so many things. You know, in the UK, for example, 3 lockdowns, you know, we've been in and out, people have been working from home. Unfortunately, people have lost loved ones due to COVID and other situations over the last year. You just speak to someone, take time for yourself, breathe, just relax, just breathe, and don't be ashamed of it as well. There's such a, I can't think of the word, that there's such
Stigma.
a thing around, that's the one, thank you, Simone.
Yeah.
There's such a stigma around mental health, and there shouldn't be anymore. There shouldn't be, you know, at some point in our lives, and I'm sure everybody has felt it in some way or another. Don't be ashamed to speak to someone. You are loved. You are, you know, there are people there for you. Use your network. Speak to your family or your colleagues. Just be yourself, as we've said throughout this, and just speak to someone.
No, well, and well, Matt, I'm so sorry to hear about that, and thank you for coming on and sharing us and letting us know. That's amazing. And I do think just talking about how you're feeling is the first step to making you feel better. When I've had a bad day, if I tell my boyfriend or my sister or my mum, whoever, I instantly feel better. Instead of bottling it all up, talking about it really, really helps.
May I just add one more
Bertie,
point? Sorry, is that all right?
yes, oh yeah, please, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Sorry,
No, go ahead. I was actually going to say something, but go ahead, so please.
I think one thing that's really helped me with my mental health over the last year or so, especially being in lockdown, is once I finish work, is closing my laptop, putting it away in a drawer and going out for a walk.
Yeah.
Just being able to switch off, even if it's, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, just going out, having a walk and just leaving it all behind you. That has really, really helped me to be able to switch off the difference between home and work life.
Yeah.
Bertie, can I quickly add something? It's just what Matthew said was so powerful. And thank you so much for sharing that, Matthew. I really appreciate it. I think you mentioned it so brilliantly. You are loved. And I wanted to talk about the notion of personal board of directors, which is something I have. It includes your sponsor, it includes your mentor, it includes the person who can tell you the truth, which in my case is my mother. But I think it's so important to have that support network. Don't think it's just about your career. Sometimes it's a friend. And I completely echo, do not feel afraid to speak about mental health. If our Royal Highness, they've made a huge impact on mental health. We have Mental Health Week. It is something that is indoctrinated in a lot of companies, but it's something that we need to take care of. And I go back to what I say, there is no wealth without health.
Yeah, so true. I mean, I've seen a lot of clients as well, exercise is amazing for your mental health, and one of their benefits is, obviously gym memberships, but they are sort of saying, have an hour and a half lunch break so you can go out, you can do a gym class, you can shower, get ready, have lunch, and then feel rejuvenated, again for the afternoon, instead of crushing it all into an hour. And I think that's great, and how it should be. So guys, this has been amazing. I've loved it. We've only got 5 minutes left, so we'll answer a few questions. The first one is from Catherine Rayner, and the question is, what are the key ways to build trust and a good relationship with a new boss? I don't know who wants to answer that one first.
I've got a quick tip. So I've had a couple of new bosses, and I think it again relates to going in with the attitude of what your role is, and it's not being arrogant about it, in the same way that when I go to my doctor, if I've got a concern, I go in and I tell them the concern. I don't want them to be hesitant when they're telling me what they think the problem is. I want them to know what they're talking about. So your new boss has got so much that they're going to have to understand and learn, especially if it's a new company. If you're the person who's supposed to be guiding them, guide them. Take their hand firmly and guide them. Don't be wishy-washy about it, because if they know that that person who's going to be beside them understands what their role is, that immediately builds confidence, and it can build that trust up in you as an assistant. So make sure you know what your role is. Again, it comes down to that, because that helps build the trust. And I had a new boss just before I went into lockdown. So I was in my same team, but a new boss came in. So it was very much me explaining what the team is, what my role is, asking the question, what is the outcome? What is it that you want? And we had to integrate her into a team remotely. So building that confidence over the past year has been all done remotely. I haven't been able to read signs that I might when they're sitting next to me. But that's how you build trust, by you being confident in what your role is and how you execute it, because they then put trust in you.
Yeah, no, great. So Shakyra or Matt, do you want anything else to add about, ways to build trust and a good relationship with a new boss?
I think it's just to echo. Oh, sorry, Matthew.
No, go on, I'll let you go
I think
first.
I'll keep it short. I think it's just to echo what Simone has said. I'm a great believer in I let my work do the talking. I prove myself in knowing my role and knowing what I need to do for my boss, and being clear on what my objectives are, and most importantly, the objectives for my manager. Yeah.
Right. Matt, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think as well, when your new boss comes in, go to them and find out what they want you to do as well. There may be things that you've done with your old boss that may not work for them. So speak to them, see what they suggest will work for them and what will work for you. So work together and meet in the middle. Build that relationship and that trust as soon as you can.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. But Emma Perlman, she currently works as an EA in the NHS, and which is obviously very different to the private sector. And she's this is targeted at you, Matt. How do you gain experience to become a private PA and to work closely with an individual like Lucy?
I'll be honest with you, when I started working with Lucy 9 years ago, I'd never ever been an assistant before. I worked in a garden centre and I met Lucy on our local Chamber of Commerce. And we started planning events locally and things like that. And Lucy had only had the magazine for about a year. And she said to me, because I really wanted to get into events, and where I was based, unfortunately, there wasn't that opportunity. So Lucy said to me, look, I've got this magazine. Would you like to come on part-time? You can do some admin for me and things like that. So I came on board doing a couple of days a week, and then it slowly built up. I built the level of trust. I've learned the business. I learned how Lucy likes to do things. If you wanted to get into it, I would say find someone who may be starting out or maybe well placed. If you know someone who's working for an individual, start to build that relationship, find out what works for them, and slowly incorporate yourself. I know obviously if you're working full-time already, it's not that easy, but put that foot in the door, make the first steps ahead of time so they know you're there when the time comes.
Yeah, no, I mean, so often candidates say, how do I get in the private sector, or become do private personal duties as well? And I just say, you just again put your hand up and sort of say, look, is there anything else I can do? Or, yeah. Oh, you're going on holiday, do you want me to look at flights? You just got, again, is being able to speak up, have that initiative and that willingness that you want to get involved. Well, guys, time is up. I just want to say I've absolutely enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope everyone has enjoyed as much as I have, and I have definitely learned a few things. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.